Hi, I'm Peter Parsons, your town supervisor. And I'm here today with my police chief, Frank Secret, and pastor, the Reverend Chip Andrus. And we're here to discuss domestic violence in Lewisboro and the area around us. And maybe the best way to get this started is to delve into the history of how Chip became involved in this whole issue in the area.
Very good. Well, it started, as you know, as a victim of domestic violence came to my study seeking pastoral care. And part of that pastoral care was to not only meet with her about her spiritual life and how that was damaged during domestic violence, but also to work with other people who were helping her out. So she requested that I go and meet with Nicole, who was helping her at Victims Assistance Services. Now, this particular victim who lives in this area had to travel all the way to Peekskill. This is where Victims Assistance Services is located, at least the closest location. And so we traveled down to see Nicole. And out of that conversation, we decided that we wanted to be more proactive in the area. Nicole happened to share with me what is called domestic incident reports for Lewisboro and Pound Ridge initially. And we'll refer to those as DIRs, but that's domestic incident reports. And it was astounding the number of domestic incident reports, not only the hamlet of South Salem, but in Lewisboro and in Pound Ridge. And I will say this, it was not only astounding the number of people who were reporting domestic abuse, but it's more astounding that many people don't report at all. Is that right?
Well, without a doubt. If you say in generally 1/3 of all crimes get reported, when it comes to domestic violence, it's far greater that is not reported. And there's many reasons, from the stigma and everything else that goes with reporting it. So it's a very hidden crime.
Right. And one of the things that we realized is that a lot of victims don't know where to go, and they don't necessarily want to. The first step, they don't want it to be going to the police because they're scared of their spouses or retaliation.
Well, one of the first things we learned as we talked in this group was, here's a woman who was abused by her husband, and she finally gets the courage up to call, the police, and who walks through the door in most cases is a male figure. So that right off the bat, you could see a lot of them were very like, gee, this is not really, it's not easy for me under these circumstances to open up and tell us what really happened.
And the other issue that we found is that historically, churches and even the police department needed more training in how to engage victims of domestic abuse. Traditionally, I can speak for the church, we've not been as responsive as we should have been. And in fact, in many ways, the church has been abusive to people who are already abused, using doctrines like be submissive to your husband, go back and be a good wife, divorce is the last option, these types of things. As a matter of fact, the victim that came to me had driven by a church and wanted to go in and talk to the pastor there, and was afraid to do so because she knew that that's what the pastor would say. So luckily she did come to me, but this is after coming to police and having a lot of and Victims Assistance Services and My Hope's Door, so what we wanted to do, first of all, is to create a network where there were more opportunities for engagement for people who were victims of domestic abuse, so that you didn't have just one place, one option to seek help. And not only that, but when you did seek help, that you knew that there wasn't just one entity that was going to be there for you to help you get through the domestic violence incidents and become a survivor instead of a victim. So what we did, this was the brainchild of this particular victim, Nicole and I, and then Chief Secret. We decided to put a network together, and the network would involve the three entities of engagement that are on the front of domestic abuse, or at least could be on the front of domestic abuse and be helpful to these victims. That would be clergy, that's interfaith clergy, law enforcement, and victims assistance services, and places like My Hope Store, or Hope Store, and My Sister's Place. And we began meeting in this very room.
Yes.
This is where we began what is now called today Northeast Westchester Domestic Abuse Alliance. And it began with 3 years ago, I guess, is that?
Just about that time.
About 3 years ago, right here in this room, in this church. And we use the term abuse because the other part about this is violence is one form of abuse, but it also could be controlling behavior. It could be financial,
even
right?
Sexual. There are different types. It's not just always physical abuse.
Right. Yeah, wives can be raped by their husbands, and these are
legally,
things,
yes,
yeah.
Correct.
And these are things that we didn't find out until we started the training. What was most helpful to us is the people who have been working with domestic abuse victims at Victims Assistance Services, Hope Store, My Sister's Place, helped us get the training that we needed for clergy and for law enforcement. They began with a training with law enforcement here in Lewisboro.
Yeah, right. We met
So
down
the
outside
first
Russell.
big change I'm gathering from what you two are saying is that this community has undergone almost a revolution in thinking. What you have decided is that this is a real problem in the community, and it is a problem that clergy and the police can get together to help people.
Along with the people who do the services for
Yes.
Shelters and victims assistance.
And that's a very big thing. In other words, this is not something we're going to sweep under the carpet. It is something it's an area where we're going to deliver genuine help to people.
Well, in law enforcement standpoint, part of what was done in the old days, for lack of a better term, would be you'd fill out the DIR, you'd take off the back page, you'd hand it to the woman, and just kind of tell her all these numbers on the back and just walk out the door. What we learned is that's not the way to do it. That's not really getting them the help they need. If you have to, right then and there, pick up the phone yourself, make the calls. Now that we've all worked together, it's not like, well, I don't know who this group is. Everybody knows each other now. And if they don't want to make that was the whole beauty of having clergy come in. It didn't matter what religion. If you're going to feel more comfortable speaking to your rabbi, your pastor, your priest, anybody, we're trying to find who is the person that's going to get that woman to finally say, okay, I'll get the help I need. So that was kind of it was just a multi-pronged approach to it, instead of just the old way. Well, here, this is how you do it.
Right, exactly. And for clergy, one of the big things that we've been able to do within the community is put a face on domestic violence, as far as the people who are willing to help other people, to be able to speak publicly in a pulpit about domestic violence, which is a new thing, to say publicly that it's wrong and that we're here to help, and to create church or synagogues as communities of safe place, as opposed to places to avoid or where you don't talk about those kinds of things. Now the discussion of domestic violence is open, and we're willing to have the discussion, and we're willing to provide help. And we're part of a team with law enforcement and with these victims assistance services. So we've created, for lack of a better term, a united front to combat this evil that is very prevalent in Lewisboro, very prevalent in Pound Ridge, very prevalent in Northeast Westchester. And this is where we're concentrating our efforts. This did not start out of a paradigm. We did not get a model from somebody and start this. We saw the problem. We put faces to victims, and then we heard from them, heard from the people who can help, and then decided to all come together, all of us to get trained. That was very important. We're trained in this now, and to create what became organically a good model that we hope that other people can replicate. This started here as us responding with people who are concerned religiously, from law enforcement and from people who are advocates, to help domestic violence victims. It started all of us coming together, and it was very unplanned in the beginning. It just developed over time as we worked through this. And what has emerged now, after years of work, is truly a unique consortium of folk that are willing to combat what is really an unseen, has been swept under the rug type of evil that permeates this area. And it's people that you see every day. And it happens to people of all economic status.
Well, I think that's a good point, because it's very easy to say, well, this is not an inner city, so there can't be domestic violence up here. We're an affluent community, and that doesn't happen here. And as the stats show, that's completely wrong. Right. Domestic violence knows no boundaries. I mean, it can happen anywhere to anybody. That's the way it is.
Right, and it's not always women. There are men who are abused as well by women in different dynamics. There are same-sex couples that also experience abuse, right. And there are children who are definitely affected by domestic abuse as well. So
right.
It's a huge issue. It's very serious, and because you don't see it every night on the daily news does not mean it's not happening all around you. It could be next door.
Yeah, and although, Frank, earlier on, you've told me that although maybe there are only normally about 30 reported incidents a year
right.
in Lewisboro, we know that in fact 1 in 4 families experience some kind of domestic violence during their existence.
I think the stat is 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime.
Oh, sorry.
And we know so much of it is underreported. So yes, even though I could say, well, from 2013 to 2014, our number of reported incidents stayed exactly the same, but we know those numbers are really higher. And the fact that it hasn't gone down is probably the bad part.
Right.
If you could say, well, they cut in half and hopefully next year, but it's not. I mean, it didn't go up, and you'd say, well, that's great, but it did not go down, and that's the problem. Trying to find these people and then get them the help that they need.
Right.
So let's assume that somebody is at the moment is going through some form of victimization. What should they do?
Well, you'd like to say, of course, here's the basis of the group. If you're uncomfortable with calling the police because you're going to say, well, you know what, I know how they're going to react to this, and etc. But here's what we're saying in this whole interview is that you have your clergy to turn to. We can list later on all from Hope Store, my sister's place. We can put these numbers up, hopefully on the bottom. There's a lot of different places now. You contact somebody that you think you're going to be comfortable with, and hopefully that will be a part of also in the group is we have survivors.
That's right, exactly.
And that's a key too. So nobody's going to be calling us up and saying, well, and obviously you're right, we don't know what it's like when we see it from a certain point of view. But we have in our group, we have survivors. People have been through this. And they have survived. And if that's what you need to connect by talking to somebody like that to get you over the hump to get help, then that's we can offer that as well.
So the 3 most obvious places to go if you're in trouble is, first of all, if it's immediate physical trouble, then there's really only one place where to go,
911,
and that's 911.
Correct.
But there are also a couple of charities, Hope Store, which really works as a sort of first responder in this, whose number is 888-438-8700, and my sister's place, which is 800-298-SAFE, S-A-F-E. And I know that those are on the screen as I speak, and if you ever think you may need them, please make a note of them.
Yeah, and at any time, and we'll list the clergy as well that are involved in New Day. You can contact us. Those are the first levels of defense. We're here as clergy as support. We can help you make the phone call. We know the thing about the group is, I'm not calling just a place. I'm calling people I know, and I know very well now, and we have a name, and so all of us, law enforcement, clergy, victims assistance, we all know each other. So it's a group that we're calling friends that can help you out. We can give spiritual care, we can give comfort, we can give you a safe place, but ultimately, victims need to be ready for a plan too. And I will say this, if you're watching this and you feel unsafe, you really need to create a safety plan, and calling either Hope's Door or My Sister's Place is a very good thing to do. You don't have to go there, you don't have to end up being there if you're not ready for that, but they can help you with a safety plan. And one thing I can tell you right now, do not have arguments in your kitchen and do not have arguments in your bathroom. Those are staples that we know about, and we can tell you now, and that's the kind of thing you will learn more about that if you seek help, how to protect yourself, how to become ready to make whatever step you're ready to make, and we're here to help you because we want you to be safe, and we want to make sure that everyone who is a victim of domestic abuse knows that there are a lot of people out here working together to provide services for you.
And this is a group which meets fairly regularly.
Monthly.
Monthly, under the banner of New Day. And it consists of police chiefs from Pound Ridge and Lewisboro. It consists of clergy. It consists, believe it or not, of town supervisors. And experts in this kind of counseling. And it is a good, strong group trying to help remedy this situation for individuals in the communities. I'd like to thank my guests. They've made huge strides in helping us remedy this situation in town. We're far from there. We need the help of everybody who feels they may be in any way threatened. But today, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I'd like to thank Frank for his time and Chip for his time. Thank you again.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.